So when we're working on the abdomen, we want to make sure that the client's comfortable. So your client might have came to you many times before and they know you and they trust you and they know that the ways that you work. You've also got clients that might be new to you. They could be a recommendation, so they already have heard how great you are, or they could be a completely new client and you really are showing them just how good you are, how well you work and how professional you are. So everything such as using the best towels that you can, making sure they're freshly laundered, making sure that their stomach is completely covered when you're not working on it. When you do expose the stomach, making sure that it is just the stomach area and you're not exposing too high or too low. These are all things that make someone feel that you are professional, there's a lot of attention to detail and they don't feel exploited. Even though it's not your intention to exploit someone, you will hear people saying that they had been to a therapist before and they did feel that it wasn't as comfortable as it could have been with someone else. So just all these fine attention to detail elements, just making sure that if that client is quite a nervous person, you just make sure that everything is just spot on for them. So as we know, being a therapist is not just a case of going in, doing the massage moves, finishing and taking the money. That is not what you're a therapist for. It's about checking that the person's happy at all times, looking at the body language. If you can see their face when you're working on the front of the body, are they looking as if they're in pain? Do they look relaxed? These are all things that we're looking for. So with the abdomen in particular, as we've said before in the specific tutorials where we talk about the massage routines and the movements, we are making sure that the client wants to get their abdomen done and making sure that they're safe to get the abdomen done too. So again, you want to check that they've not had any recent operations, they've not got any menstruation at that moment, they're feeling nice and healthy, they want to get it done, they're not ticklish and they don't enjoy it. All these things that you're asking your client. If they've never had it done before and they're not sure, then as long as they're safe to do so, I think that they'd really enjoy it. So you can always ask them. And as we know, it's all about getting the pressures correct as well. What you don't want to do is go in too heavy, because if it's a brand new area to be massaged, they might feel really uncomfortable if you're too heavy handed. And as we know, there's not a lot of supporting structure on the abdomen, so we can't be too heavy a pressure. But likewise, too light and it really doesn't feel comfortable at all. It just feels ticklish and a lot of people will say it's just irritating. And you might even find that a client has had their abdomen done before and it was too light a pressure, and because of that they don't think they want it done again. That's where we can step in and say, well, if you've never been with me before as a therapist, would you like to just try a mini abdomen massage and see what you think? You might quite enjoy it. Then you'll know if that client's the type that does enjoy it or doesn't. But I think overall, what we want to remember as therapists is it can be a really effective massage for lots of conditions, and it's always good to let your client try. So when you're massaging an arm with your client, it's another area which may feel quite unusual to them if they've not had regular full body massages before. In a similar vein to the abdomen, your arm is quite a personal area in the sense that some people don't really feel comfortable to touch with someone that they're not aware of. Sometimes even shaking hands with someone, you can tell straight away if they're not particularly comfortable in a situation. So if you're massaging a client who is not particularly used to a massage touch, then just take it nice and easy with the arm and explain to them in the consultation exactly what it is that you're going to do. As you can see here, we're covering the full arm area, so the client will probably start to relax about 2 or 3 minutes in. They start to realise exactly what you're doing, why you're doing it. Again, explain this in the consultation. There's very much two styles of client that you'll find the more that you massage. The client that just relaxes instantly, and whenever you try to lift the arm or manipulate, they just completely go with it. And then the client that even though they might think they're relaxed or they're trying their best to relax, when you're lifting up their arm to do certain styles of manipulation, there is a little bit of resistance, and quite often they don't realise that they're resisting. It's just something that they're maybe not quite relaxed enough yet to just give in to the massage and trust the therapist. But if you get the opportunity to build up a relationship with a client, you'll find that it's something that will start to happen. And it's a lovely feeling when you've broken through that barrier and there's a client that maybe at first was just a little bit apprehensive of what you do. And then as time goes on, there's a trust there. And within 30 seconds to a minute of starting the treatment, they are completely relaxed and have complete faith in you. So again, with doing a full arm massage, if you want to look at some of the specific massage manipulations, then you can refer to our other tutorials. But on here again, it's just about sort of hints, tips, helping you to relax watching the videos too. What you'll find is at the top of the arm, because there's more of a muscle bulk there, we can really do the sort of deep manipulations. With the Swedish massage, we can get into the hacking, we can get into the deeper massage, we can really work the biceps and triceps. When it gets to the lower arm, it's much more gentle, sort of nice manipulations helping to increase lymphatic flow, give everything a little boost. What you find is from the wrist to the bend in the elbow, inside is a very delicate, very sort of ticklish, if you like, area. It's a really nice area to get massaged. It's an instant relaxation. We're back again to the trust thing. When you think about the inside of your arm, it's an area that you don't tend to expose to strangers. So for your therapist to be massaging the inside, it feels lovely, it feels relaxing, and it can give people a really nice tingly feeling and just instant relaxation. Same goes for the hand. You don't often get your hand massaged. It's a really nice area. If someone can stretch it out for you and do some nice sort of gentle manipulations, really nice feeling just to get a lovely stretch on that hand. Back massages tend to be the most popular request that you'll get from your clients. It's probably the one area where even if you don't necessarily have a sore back, just by having a back massage, it gives you a total sense of well-being, relaxation, and can just help to ease away any aches and pains. Even if someone's just feeling a little bit under the weather, as long as it's not a medical condition that they need to receive treatment for, maybe they've just been feeling a bit tired, they've been overworking, been a bit stressed, just having a back massage in half an hour to yourself can work absolute wonders. So when you're preparing for a back massage, again, like every treatment, do your consultation, check for contraindications. But as you'll see here, it was deliberate that we asked the client if they wanted to keep their underwear on and we can unhook it. The truth is, it's because unless you're working into the arms and the shoulder area a great amount and for specific reasons, then it really isn't essential that they take the underwear off. Ideally, it will give you the easiest area to work on and give you maximum manipulation on the tissues. But sometimes you do find that for whatever reason, a client doesn't feel completely comfortable stripping off to the waist. So in that case, just treat everyone individually and just decide, does it really mean that I can't do the treatment? If you feel that, no, I can't do the treatment this way, then explain the reasons why to the client. But if you're quite happy that just by unhooking it, you can still work around and do what you need to do, then just go ahead that way. At the end of the day, you're your own therapist, you're doing your job for yourself, so you make the decisions for you. But likewise, the client also will make their decisions, and together, if you fit well and you understand each other, then you can always modify your treatments to suit. So with a back massage, the other thing to remember is exposing enough of the back to work on. Sometimes when you're not used to it and you're just learning, you think that you've exposed the full back area, but you've actually just exposed to the waist. So you really want to make sure that you're exposing to the lower back. So it's just above the glutes, and you'll see that there's a natural curve in the back. That's really where you want to be working to. Again, some therapists will request that you wear no underwear and they will just cover you with the towel. Other therapists are quite happy for you to have your lower underwear on and they will just tuck the towel in. A good piece of advice in that situation, if you're the therapist, possibly to mention to your clients that there will be oil involved and therefore sometimes you find that people do wear their absolute best sets, and the one thing that you don't want is a complaint later on if they were wearing something light. And even though you protected the underwear, there can sometimes be some discoloration with certain oils that you use, so that is something to bear in mind. Likewise, if you're the client, by all means you want to feel comfortable, but I wouldn't wear anything that is so expensive that you couldn't relax during the treatment because you're worried that there is possibly a chance that some oil would damage your underwear. Then you're just going to miss the point of the massage and you won't relax. Likewise, different oils can discolour towels. So if you are in any doubt whether your oil could possibly do that, then stick with darker colours. The other thing to remember when you're exposing the back is not to expose it to such an area where the client feels uncomfortable. So by all means, you've got to expose to the glutes, but some clients won't feel too comfortable if you've exposed beyond that. Again, everyone's different. There is no right and wrong when it comes to how you feel. So that's yet another reason why you look for a therapist that you feel works well with you and you've got a synergy. For some people, they don't think twice about it. And for others, it's a bit of a make or break situation where they might feel that that was just a little bit too uncomfortable for them. Just think, sometimes if you've had a massage yourself, you might feel as if you're incredibly exposed and you're actually not. But that can be the difference between going back to a therapist or building up a lovely relationship. So just do what feels right for both of you. And the key there is definitely communication. So as you can see here, when we're working on the back, you always want to warm it up, always do your effleurage. We have our tutorials that explain the different movements and the different techniques. This is much more about just chatting you through a real-time treatment. What you will be doing, obviously, is feeling for that client, for their tightness, their muscle knots, their nodules. So even though you've got a basic routine in your head, the last thing that you want to do is a sort of one size fits all. Really take your time, really feel for that client. You'll be able to tell if they tighten up or tense at certain times. You'll be able to feel if there's maybe a little pull, maybe you'll be working on an area, sometimes they even jump. If they jump, it can be as simple as they were starting to fall asleep and then they actually caught themselves before they did. That can be all it is. It might be nothing that you did as a therapist. But other times it can be something such as a little area that's a bit ticklish for them. If that's the case, you can adapt your pressure to see if that suits. Or just sometimes it's just the way someone is. Sometimes they just have a little area that it doesn't matter what your pressure is, they're just going to find it a little bit ticklish. Again, just being your own therapist and adapting to suit the client, you can decide just to omit certain moves if they're not really doing what they're intended to do with that client. So you're taking your time, you're working all over. When you're doing knuckling moves, not only are you giving everything a stretch and you're checking for nodules, but you are just feeling within yourself, is there anything there that needs a little bit of extra work? Is there an area that feels extra tight? One side can be tighter than the other. And then once you've done all these moves, it's always good to do your effleurage just to give everything a stretch, give it all a flush out and prepare the skin for the next movements. The worst thing that you want to do is overstimulate your client. You'll know if you're a trained therapist that erythema is a normal reaction, but excessive erythema where you feel that the skin's starting to get way too hot, if you actually see that it's getting excessively red, again, it's not necessarily anything that you've done, it could be the client's reaction, but you do want to be watching out for that. I think everyone is guilty at times when they get used to a routine and they get used to how they work. Sometimes that their mind can drift just for a moment, but you really do want to make sure that when you're treating someone that you're fully focused, you're feeling for things, you're looking for things. It might not be a movement that you've done, it could maybe be the product that you're using, there's just something in it that doesn't agree with the client. If that happens, you want to catch it and deal with it as soon as you can. So not that it's a common thing, but if there was a product reaction, you know that you would just stop the treatment very, very calmly, no need to alarm anyone, just stop the treatment, remove that product, and if necessary, use cold compresses just to soothe and cool that area right down. Even if it's alarmed you a bit and it's something that's never happened before, it's just something that you can do. just to make sure that it doesn't get worse and you don't want to go ahead and keep working and think, actually, looking back, I should have stopped a few minutes ago. You also don't need to alarm the client and tell them that something's gone wrong. All you need to do is just very, very calmly explain that they can still lie down, they can stay relaxed, but you're stopping the treatment just to see if the product's caused any sort of reaction. Once you've put on the cold compresses, it could just be a matter of moments before you realise that everything's starting to go back to normal. Depending on your client, you would either stop the treatment and not carry on, or if you'd very quickly got their skin back to a healthy condition, you could make a decision between yourself and the client if you were going to swap and go to a different product, maybe a product you'd used before, and then you would be safe to continue in that situation. But again, you can't have one answer for everyone. It's really got to be unique to that situation there and then. And the best advice that therapists can give each other is trust your judgment. So when we're working on the client as well, we want to make sure that we're really working on the tissues and we're performing the moves correctly. Sometimes feedback from customers that have maybe been to other therapists can be that they loved when one therapist worked to quite a depth of pressure on them. They maybe tried another therapist, and even though they enjoyed it, they felt that the pressure was too light. Likewise, sometimes it's the opposite. Didn't enjoy one particular treatment because it was too heavy a depth. There's also, I had one personal experience where it was just a little bit too much pressure on my neck and I actually got a little trapped nerve. It's only temporary, it didn't last very long at all, but that told me that that was just too much of a depth of pressure on my neck for me. So it could be perfectly fine for someone else, but my body obviously didn't like that, and the result was a temporary trapped nerve. Just feels uncomfortable, it's not going to do any harm at all. But if you're honest with yourself, you remember these things, and you would either need to say to that therapist next time that it was maybe just a touch too heavy on that area, or unfortunately sometimes clients decide just not to go back to that therapist. It's always good to be honest though, because sometimes you're not aware of something that you did and you'll only learn by honest feedback. But again, just working on those areas. Remember, when you're working any sort of manipulative movement at all, anything that gets quite into the tissues, a nice effleurage stretch just to make sure that you're stretching everything out and you're giving it all a nice move to the lymph nodes and stretching anything out. It's also very relaxing for the client when you can see and feel that there's lovely stretching moves in between. Remember, effleurage is a linking move. So when you're working on the lower back, it actually can sometimes feel a little bit more ticklish than the top. And I think it's because that we probably do carry things on our shoulders a lot, and we are probably, if anything, if anyone does ask a friend or a family member to loosen off any tightness or pain in their back, it is normally the shoulders. So what you'll find is, if you've never had a massage done before, the shoulder area normally feels instantly relaxing and you feel very comfortable there. But it can be the lower back that sometimes feels a little bit strange if you understand, if you've just not had it before. It's more of the nerve endings don't often get massaged there if you're not used to it. Again, if you're saying to someone that's in the house with you, my back's a little bit sore, do you mind working on it? It tends not really to be the lower back that you ask to be focused on. And even if it is, it would be through clothing. So if you're not used to massage before, the lower back can be an area that just takes a few moments to get used to. There is quite a lot of sensitive nerve endings there too, so you do tend to feel that you need a nice amount of pressure there. But there are quite a lot of moves that you can do within a back massage that really do stretch that area out, and providing that your depth of pressure is adequate for your client, it won't actually make them uncomfortable. But I have heard stories where clients have been so unused to having a back massage that just the initial touch at the base of the back can cause them to wriggle about, because it's just something that is very, very new to them. So that's your job then as a therapist, to sort of relax them, get them used to your pressure. And what you can do is actually start at the top of the bed at the client's head, and you can work from the shoulders down, a sort of reverse effleurage, and you work from shoulders to the base of the back. And what that can do is introduce your client to your pressure without starting at an area that might actually feel just that little bit ticklish to begin with. Doing some double-handed effleurage and double-handed kneading is always lovely because you have just that extra pressure there. And when we use our pressure, we use it carefully. It's not that we're pressing as much weight as we can onto the client. It's that we're using extra pressure just to really stretch off any tightness, any irritations, anything that's just making the client feel like their back's in need of a stretch. And then obviously when we're working on the spine, we want to make sure that it's never directly on it. So when we use the term working on the spine, what we mean is spinal work. You never want to put direct pressure on it because it's such a delicate area and it's the neural pathway to the brain. What we always do is work at the sides because there's muscle there, there's nerve endings. We can definitely release tightness. There's lots of different tiny bones there, tiny individual vertebrae. And by working alongside them, we can help to give everything a release and a stretch, but never working on it. If you ever find that you're accidentally putting pressure on the spine, instantly stop. And likewise, if you're able to ask your client if they're not sleeping, you can always ask them, is my pressure okay? Is there any discomfort? You always know as a client when there's discomfort, but it's necessary. When you're removing any lactic acid from an area, there's a tight muscle. That's the kind of discomfort that actually feels good because you know that there's a benefit to it. So sometimes when you'll be working on someone and say, does that hurt? Maybe you're working on the shoulders and they might feed back to you and say, it's uncomfortable, but I'm needing it. Please keep going. But there is a difference between that and that actually is just sore. That's hurting. I'm not enjoying that at all. So in situations like that, you have to make sure that it's lactic acid removal. That's one thing. But if it's just discomfort, you have to adapt. And sometimes it's not because you're doing something wrong. It might just have to be a case of adapting to that client. If someone's quite frail, as you get older, normally we used to classify clients maybe getting into their 60s and older as needing the adapted pressure, but the truth is everyone's healthier for longer, fitter for longer, looking after themselves longer. So now it's not a simple case of putting an age bracket on it. It really is just how your client's doing, the condition of your client, muscle tone, do they have any ailments, do they have osteoporosis, do they have arthritis, do they have conditions that have weakened their bones and muscles? These are all things that A, might be contraindications, or B, might be special care requirements. So you take all of this into account. Even if you've got a client that maybe just has a low body fat, they could be very, very muscular and you might be able to put in quite a decent pressure. But if they're quite thin and they don't really have a lot of body fat, but they don't have a lot of muscle mass either, then you have to be careful because it's not a case of saying, right, low body fat, therefore lots of pressure. It could be low body fat, but not a great muscle tone, so adapt your pressure accordingly. Just like we said before, one size doesn't fit all. Each client is unique and different. Stretching out the muscle and the tissues always feels lovely to your client, and sometimes there's a great heat involved there too, so it's something that most people will say to you that they really enjoyed. So anything that's quite a brisk movement also can let your client know that there's something happening. Normally when it's quite slow and quite specific a move, that helps them to relax more deeper. Sometimes they do fall asleep, as I've said before, but when it's a slow move, it's encouraging deep relaxation, and when it's a quicker move, it tends to sort of rejuvenate, and occasionally it can alert your client, but it very much depends on what it is that you're doing. But it's always good when you've been working on an area just to give it a lovely stretch. And even when we're doing anything like transverse stretches, it might look as if you're applying pressure onto the spine, but what you're actually doing is easing off your pressure when you cross over the spinal area. So your client would be able to feel when you were working that there's an ease of pressure over the middle, but possibly when you're watching a tutorial or another therapist working, it might not be so obvious. But if you're doing anything where it appears that it's working over the spine, then there will be a release of pressure over that area. It's always nice to work on the lower back. a lot of people, in fact most people, if you're being honest with yourself, do not have very good posture. Normally the minute that you say to someone, how's your posture in your consultation, everyone sits up and thinks about their posture, but generally we might start off the day with good intentions, but just a case of the chairs that you sit in, driving, carrying items. For a lot of people it is office chairs, maybe you're working over a computer. All of these things affect your posture. So what we can help to do in this area is really stretch out that lower back. If anyone's got sciatic problems, as long as they're not receiving medical treatment and they've been advised against a massage, it's also really nice to get into that area. Just again, be guided by your client. Most people will at this stage be completely relaxed, but if you do have a client that would rather chat through it, then if you've already said to them they can go to sleep but they'd rather chat, that's up to them. They might want to keep chatting through. In that case, you can ask them, how does this move feel? Is this okay for you? Does this feel uncomfortable? You're able to get more engagement throughout. But the absolute goal, so that your client can get a complete sense of calm, is to try and get them to fall asleep. But we've said in previous videos, sometimes someone's coming to you because they want the sociable aspect of the treatment. And in that case, maybe part of their relaxation is that they do want to keep talking. Sometimes that is just the way, and you might have tried to guide the client into relaxing and closing their eyes and not necessarily falling asleep, but getting into that state, the sort of sleep-like state. But occasionally, I'd say it's not that common, but sometimes you want a client, well, you want them to go to sleep, but they just want to talk. And it could be for a variety of reasons. It could be a stressed mum who never gets listened to in the house because everybody's always asking them to do things and want their opinion. And maybe their way of relaxing is just to talk to you about everything that's happening with them in their life. Sometimes it's someone that might have been going through quite a hard time. Maybe they've had some anxiety, depression. One of the best things that they can do when they're feeling up to it is go and get treatments to make themselves feel better. Sometimes they just want to switch off and relax. Other times it's actually talking through, even if it's just nothing about how they're feeling, they just want the social aspect of being with you. That's fine, just be guided through it. Sometimes though, someone just loves the social aspect of any treatment at all, and they are actually relaxing, they are enjoying the massage, but for them it's not enjoyable to try and fall asleep. For them, part of it is relaxing while it's happening, while talking you through everything that's happening with them. Just be guided. You will have some therapists that feel that there's absolutely no way that this can be effective, but at the end of the day, if your client is paying for that service and that's what they want and they are happy with that, then so long as you're doing the best massage that you can, there's nothing else you can ask for. What you would remember though is client confidentiality. What happens in the salon stays in the salon, and don't be drawn into gossip, don't be drawn into talking about people. It's best always to make sure that when they leave that you wouldn't wish that anything you'd said didn't be taken out with the room. So you do have a responsibility to all of your clients to talk about areas they want to talk about, draw them away from areas that they shouldn't be talking about or you shouldn't be talking about, and if they are insistent that they want to talk, then bring it back to a neutral territory. And as you can see here, it's always lovely to do some stroking before you move into more of your heavier movements. So you've got your hacking and your cupping coming up. Not only are these really good at toning the muscles and helping to move everything along and get the systems working, but it's also subconsciously letting your client know that they are approaching the end of the massage. At this stage, they've been so relaxed. If they have fallen asleep, been really relaxed, really calm, really peaceful. This is then the most stimulating move that's happened all treatment. So even though you might not be saying it to your client, there is a subconscious message saying, we're approaching the end now. So if they were reasonably asleep or completely asleep, they're now going to start to wake up, because unless you're in a very deep sleep, you can't stay asleep when these much more manipulative moves are happening. So at this stage, they will be starting to stir. And all you're doing again is making sure that you're covering all the areas you can. If you're working over the spinal area, release your pressure. Once you've done that, it's always good just to finish off, just to soothe those nerve endings with your effleurage. You've stimulated them, now you want to soothe them. it's also letting your client know, right, that's us, we are now approaching the end of the treatment. Sometimes at this stage, your client can start to stir and they'll talk to you, but more often than not, they're still very, very relaxed. So you're just making sure that everything's got a nice little stretch, soothing all those nerve endings, just covering each area again. Normally when you work over the shoulders and arms here, you can actually feel the difference in skin and muscle temperature because you've warmed up all those tissues on the back. So if you were to effleurage all the way down to the elbows, you would very definitely feel a difference in temperature. And then when you're finished, you really want to cover up the client and make them feel nice and warm again. When you're massaging the back of the leg, the most important thing is to make sure that you've exposed enough working area. So what you really want to do is make sure, as well as there being enough oil for you to massage your client, you've exposed enough of the glutes that you can really get in there and massage the full leg area. For some people, they will feel exposed if they've never had a full body massage and it includes the leg, because quite often when you're the client on the bed, you can feel quite exposed, but the honest truth is you might feel as if almost all of your glute is exposed, but that shouldn't be the case. There is a bit of a debate about whether you should have underwear on or not when you're having a massage, but the truth is it should really be what you're comfortable with. As we've said before, we don't recommend that you wear your best underwear because there is oil involved and there's always a small chance that there could be some discoloration with oils. But what to do is discuss with your massage therapist if they prefer that you don't wear underwear but you're still covered with a towel. Then discuss whether you feel comfortable with that. But likewise, there are other therapists that have absolutely no issues with you wearing underwear, because what they'll do is they'll tuck the towel into it so that there's no way that it's affecting what you're doing, and likewise you stay comfortable. But the main thing is that we do expose the correct area. As you can see here, when we're massaging as well, we have to make sure that there is enough oil on the area. If there isn't enough oil, then we will just drag the skin. It ends up being more of an uncomfortable friction, and no one's actually comfortable then. The therapist isn't comfortable because all that's happening is that they're dragging and they can't perform the massage movements correctly. And as a client, it just doesn't feel nice, doesn't feel relaxing. But likewise, maybe not as common, but too much oil, it's just another issue, because then you can't control your massage moves because you're slipping about too much. For instance, with this kneading and the butterfly movement, if we had too much oil on, then we wouldn't be able to get a firm grasp on the skin. Your hands would just be sliding all over the place. It's not effective for you doing your treatment. It's also not effective for the client. So it's all about getting these things correct before you start. As you know, with these chats, it's more about telling you basically in real time, not necessarily what we're doing, but maybe some hints and tips for the therapists, but also for the client, how we do understand how you're feeling. So if you do want to know more about the specific movements, then you can check the other videos within the channel. I think it's quite important to point out to you that we're actually not judging you. A lot of people say to you, "Oh, I'm really sorry, I've not had a chance to shave my legs," or "Oh, please, I hope you don't notice that bruise." A lot of times you'll find that clients are full of apologies before you've even started the massage. There's another one sometimes, "Oh, I'm sorry, I've not had a chance to tan." There's so many reasons why we feel quite sort of underconfident as clients when we're going in for a massage. It's as if we think we're going to get judged. Just want to tell you that any professional massage therapist is not interested in whether you've shaved or waxed your legs. We're not there to judge you on whether you've got bruises. Obviously, if something's happened and you've got a massive bruise on your leg, we're going to have to treat that as either a contraindication or a special care requirement. So we might ask you how it happened. We might have to avoid it. If it was a really bad bruise, maybe you'd fell, really hurt yourself, we might have to postpone your treatment. But we are not judging you. So when you go to the doctor and when you go to any reputable therapist, please don't worry yourself about whether you feel that your legs are ready and suitable for us. We are there to make you feel better. So I really wanted to share that with you because still to this day, after well over a decade in the industry, there are still people that will say, oh, I hope you don't mind, but I've not had a chance to do this or that. We just want you to enjoy the treatment. So again, looking back at where we are within the treatment, we've warmed up the tissues and we're now doing a lot of our more strenuous movements. When you're having a massage, when there's any hacking or cupping here, remember as the therapist that you should be checking to see if your client is jumping or jerky. These could be little hints that maybe your pressure might be a bit too heavy. Maybe you are not as loose in your wrists as you should be. What you really don't want to see is somebody flinching or maybe even their shoulders rise. These are all little hints that maybe your pressure, your movements are not quite right. Sometimes people are too polite and they won't say to you that it's painful, but it's up to you, if they're not telling you what you think is the truth, to maybe work on your analysis and see if maybe you're being a little bit more heavy-handed than you think. Likewise though, sometimes people are way too soft with any of their more strenuous moves, and if it's too soft, it can be just irritating to your client and it's actually not as relaxing or effective as it's meant to be. But as you can see here, it was just out of the video, you couldn't quite see it, but when you are moving from side to side when you're doing the massage treatment, you want to try and maintain contact at all times. So depending on which way you walk around the massage table, if you can't hold on to the area that you're massaging, then try your best to sort of maintain contact as you're walking around. So maybe your hand will slide up to the shoulders. It just keeps your client safe and secure, and it also prevents them getting a fright if you drop contact and then all of a sudden you appear a few seconds later and it's quite an intense movement. So just to keep them relaxed, because sometimes they're actually relaxed and sort of, sometimes they do fall asleep. Sometimes it's just more of a sort of semi-consciousness. They're still in the room, but they're very, very relaxed, and what you don't want to do is give them a fright. But what you can see that we're doing here is working on the calf, also known as gastrocnemius. This is a lovely area to be massaged because many of us don't realise how much tension we hold in that area. So again, when you're working on that though, as a therapist, really make sure that your pressure is just right. If your client is feeling chatty and they want to talk, then it's a great time to ask them if the pressure's okay for them. If anyone's quite into their exercise, they run and they keep themselves fit, then you'll really feel the difference here in tightness, and it can be good if they are alert and want to talk, just to say to them, does this feel quite tender, is it quite sore? Because as you know, muscles will hold the lactic acid, and we can tell a lot if there's any knots and nodules, but the number one person who can give you the most response is the person that's having the massage done. Again, with some people, you might want to omit the heavier movements. It really does depend on what their situation is and what your consultation led you to decide to do. But just because we're doing a real-time back of the leg here, it doesn't mean that you have to do every movement. And we've said before, just because you're taught a routine does not mean that you have to follow the exact routine. Be guided holistically by your client. If you feel that they need a little bit more time in a certain area, a little bit more of kneading, a little bit more effleurage, then be guided by that. It's not ideal if all you do is follow your routine from step 1 to step 10 and you were just following the numbers and you weren't really connecting with your client. The main thing in these videos is really to let you have confidence in yourself as a therapist and as a client, to understand that we've got your top priorities at heart. Now this is quite interesting for therapists and clients alike when you're massaging the front of the leg. Lots of reasons why an area, to me anyway, is quite interesting that other people might think it's just another part of the body to massage. But with the leg, it can be, for quite a lot of massages, the first area where you make contact with the client. So for back, neck and shoulders, obviously you're just starting on the back. But with quite a lot, such as Swedish, aromatherapy, hot stones, many more, you will start with the front of the leg. And there are many people for which this is an area that's quite alien to massage. because if they have a choice, they'll just say, I'll stick with a back, neck and shoulders, please. Sometimes it's for time reasons, and sometimes it's just because they don't know how comfortable they would feel exposing their full body for massage. But as I've said before, and I'll say again, there is absolutely no reason why you have to expose your full body. You should not have to take all of your clothes off if you don't want to for a full body massage. Discuss it with your therapist. Some therapists will give you basically explain to you why they feel that you do not require to wear underwear, but you will be covered under the towels. And other therapists will say to you, it's absolutely fine to keep on your underwear. It's just something that we really need to make sure that you can discuss with your therapist. If that's the reason that's stopping you for going for a treatment, then make sure that you just bite the bullet, book that consultation for this week, and just explain that possibly one of the reasons is that you just don't have the comfort level for what you think is involved, because there is always a way to modify a treatment to make you comfortable. So another reason why I think the front of the leg is really interesting for us therapists when we're massaging is because it does let you know how naturally relaxed your client is. Because it tends to be the first area that we will massage in a full body, you can really feel the tension. So when someone is quite relaxed, the foot will just be nice and floppy. The leg will allow you to manipulate it as the massage movements dictate. But when someone's a little bit stressed or a little bit nervous about the massage, there'll be a lot of tension there and it'll be very stiff and tight. So when you're massaging the foot, it will not be loose. It will be very, very tight and very firm. The muscles will all be contracted. When you are massaging the leg, as you can see here, there's some movement within the leg. So when we're doing the double-handed kneading, the leg is naturally moving a little bit left and right. When someone hasn't relaxed or they're just naturally very tense and very stressed, there's almost no give. So with someone like that, maybe they just need to relax. Maybe again, it's a new relationship, a new therapist with them. Maybe they're not used to a full body massage. Maybe they've been going through quite a tough time and they're holding the stress within their body. If they're still relaxing into the treatment and they are happy to chat, then you can sort of verbally relax them. There's obviously, if you can, music within the room. But again, without going into too much detail, always make sure when there's music in the room that you have your license for it, because the last thing you want is to be fined for playing music that you didn't have the license for. But regardless of that, sometimes the music is enough to relax the person. Sometimes just being able to switch off and begin to relax and enjoy the massage itself is enough to relax them. But other times you as a therapist do have a small responsibility. Nobody's suggesting that you're a counsellor, but for that hour, you do have a small responsibility to make that person feel the best that they can. So if they are sort of holding some stress and some tension and they do want to talk, yes, we know that the goal is to get someone to be completely silent, switch off and enjoy. But as I've said before, at the end of the day, they're paying for this service. If they want to talk to you and still enjoy the benefits of the massage, then if you've subtly tried to guide them into relaxing, but they're not having it, then what's the harm? Some people maybe don't get listened to because they're a busy mum, they've got too much happening in their life, they're always working, somebody always needs them. Maybe the time with you is the time that they get to talk to someone and they're the ones that are listened to instead of always being the one that has to sit and listen themselves. So there will be therapists that may feel differently, but personally, if someone wants to talk all the way through it, it might not be ideal, but if that's what they need, then as long as you know that you're giving them the best possible massage while they're talking, then just be guided by it and just allow that person to enjoy the treatment the way they do. Number one very important thing though, which a lot of new therapists sometimes fall down at, is initially there might be a little bit of chat. You're asking the client if the pressure's okay. They might be asking you if your day's been busy. Don't misinterpret that as a reason to start lots of conversations. Sometimes, again, through teaching students throughout the years, you can sense, maybe when you're in the classroom with them, that the client is now ready to switch off, but the student couldn't sense it and they continue the conversation or they try and start another topic. be guided by your client. So when you've tried to settle them down, if you see that it's happening, don't start asking them about something else. Don't bring up a different topic. I've witnessed it before, and most clients will be very polite and will keep talking when in actual fact all they want to do is say, that's me, I'm relaxed now, I'm quite happy just to be silent and just to nod off. Sometimes when it's new to a client, at this stage when you're massaging the leg, their eyes will still be wide open. If you think that they don't realise that they're doing it and all they need is a little bit of a verbal reminder from you, such as, okay, you can just close your eyes now. If you want to drift off, I'll let you know when it's time to turn you around. Other times, maybe they're actually more relaxed than you think. So what you find is you might think, oh, they're not relaxed, their eyes are still open. But in actual fact, they've almost started to go into that hypnotic relaxation. Then just again, be guided by the moment. But if you think that they just need a little reminder that it's okay to fall asleep, then don't be afraid to say it. But personally, many years ago, I was having reflexology, and that's exactly what was happening to me as the client. My eyes were open, but I was actually quite zoned out and quite relaxed. And the therapist said, not rudely, but she just said, you can close your eyes. But the way that it was said made me feel guilty, and I thought, oh, I better close my eyes now. And that's not really what you want. You don't want to feel you've been told. You want to feel that the choice is completely yours for that hour. So we can't be hard on each other. It's a hard job that we do because we're working with the public and people are coming to us for a variety of reasons, so many different reasons. But at the same time, we do have to multitask, and there's so many things whilst doing this massage. It's not just doing your movements. You're feeling within the tissues for lots of different things that you have to maybe spend a little bit more time on or avoid or use a special care requirement. You're also making sure that your client isn't jumping. You're making sure that they don't have any ailments that maybe they weren't aware of. So many clients will have bruises and cuts on their legs. Anyone that's got pets, cats and dogs in particular, the amount of clients that won't realise that they've got bruises on their legs because their dog's been a little bit overeager and it's been going over to greet them. So this is again not about you pointing out to people and saying, oh, did you know you've got this, did you know you've got that. It's about, with the massage, making sure that you take these into consideration, making sure that you don't aggravate any areas, or if you feel that you need to modify and miss any parts out, that you do that, and you can discuss it at the end with your client what you had to do and why. Just on the knee just now, this is an area that I also find quite interesting because knees can be so problematic within so many clients. This move in particular, when you're very gently manipulating the patella, the kneecap. Me personally, I don't enjoy this move. So if I had the choice as a client, I would ask if they could omit it. For many different people, different movements feel lovely and some movements don't feel so nice. But when it comes to the knees, please check with your client that they don't have any knee conditions that could be aggravated by any of these moves. Working your way around the muscle though, for most people, unless again they've got knee issues, is lovely and relaxing. But again, just double check because people can be really jumpy in this area. And sometimes when you're doing your feedback at the end, they might say, I loved everything, but when you were massaging my knee, I felt like I was going to jump, or it didn't feel very comfortable, or it made me feel a bit icky. It's a really strange area because it is so sensitive. And if anyone's got any kneecap issues, any joint issues, then discuss it beforehand. But for the most part, as long as you're not heavy-handed, it's a really nice area to be massaged. But again, just from a client's perspective, let them know that that's involved in it, just in case they say, oh, actually, is it okay if we omit this area? You can discuss the reasons why. But from a therapist's point of view, be careful because so many clients don't realise that they should be telling you about different conditions. And it might only be when you reach that area that you realise there is maybe a little bit of swelling, a little bit of fluid retention. And then afterwards you might say, I did notice this. And then they'll say, oh, I didn't think to tell you that. Didn't think it would be important. Really important to have your thorough consultation. On to the lower part of the leg. This is quite interesting when you have to manipulate the leg so that the client is aiding you, if you like, in allowing you to massage either side of the shin on the gastrocnemius muscle. What's quite interesting here is, again, how your client reacts to a massage. Sometimes people are a little bit resistant to you trying to lift the leg. So if that's the case, then very firmly try to lift it up. Worst case scenario, and it's maybe only happened to me a couple of times in 14 years, is that leg is not shifting. So you've got a choice. If the person is very resistant and they really, maybe they're falling asleep, or maybe they're just so stressed and so uptight that they are not even aware in the relaxation of a massage that their body is resisting someone else lifting up that leg, then worst case scenario, you could omit these moves. It's not ideal, but you could. Sometimes though, you'll get a client who is so into the treatment that they are like a rag doll and you can lift that leg, you can do anything. They are just completely trusting in you. They've switched off, they've had massages before and they get it. And then other times, which is quite amusing when you're a therapist and you're used to it, the client, you can tell they're trying to second guess the way you're going to move the leg, and you don't actually have to lift the leg up, or you don't have to lift it to the side. You can tell that they are trying to work out what it is that you're going to do next, and they're almost moving the leg for you. Either of these options you can work with. The main thing is that you don't cause yourself or your client a discomfort. But it is quite interesting to see these things, and even just now when we're doing the hacking on the inside of the gastrocnemius, sometimes the client will resist and it's quite tricky to get that leg to move the way that you want. But overall, it's good to share these things because it's good for you to know as a therapist that you can get different situations where it wasn't just a simple case of performing the massage, no issues, on to the next part of the body. But I have to stress, they are rare, and for the most part, every client does settle in and they do allow you to do the massage to the best of your ability. But it would be quite a boring life as a therapist if you never had anything happening where you had to share your experiences so that no one else had to go through it too. I think it's really important that as therapists, we all share and we let you clients know that there's absolutely nothing that we don't want to help you with. We want you to enjoy your treatments.